An ethical analysis of the Bernard Madoff case by David Riggle for General Business 525, Professor Christopher Howard. Fraudulent cases with numerous victims are often called Ponzi schemes. The term Ponzi scheme originates from a case in the 1920s when Italian immigrant Charles Ponzi stole large amounts of money from nearly 30,000 American citizens through a postage pyramid scam. Ponzi was taking advantage of post-World War I inflation in Italy. At the time, postage in Italy was priced lower than that of other countries. Therefore, Ponzi was taking lower-priced postage from Italy and exchanging them in other countries. When banks wouldn't invest in his idea, he set up a stock company to invest money from the public. He promised high returns for investments, but in the end, exchanging the stamps for money was a logistic impossibility and the scheme collapsed. As we will examine, Madoff also falsely promised unrealistic returns on investments in much the same way Ponzi did. We will also discuss how and why his scheme collapsed. Finally, we will dissect this case using several business ethic theories and give recommendations to avoid following in Mr. Madoff's footsteps. Mr. Madoff founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities in 1960 at 22 years old with $5,000 that he saved up as a lifeguard. He was very much the epitome of the American dream. He established and operated his business on a foundation of good ethics and honesty. Soon Bernie established himself as a reputable and honest businessman, so much so that he served as the chairman of the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotation, otherwise known as NASDAQ. Even before illegal activities were uncovered, Madoff practiced ethically questionable business practices openly. His company actively participated in payment for order flow, which is when a dealer pays a broker for the right to execute a customer's order. While many found this practice questionable, Madoff defended it by saying, if your girlfriend goes to buy stockings at a supermarket, the racks that display those stockings are usually paid for by the company that manufactured the stockings. Order flow is an issue that attracted a lot of attention, but is grossly overrated. The core of Madoff's fraudulent activity revolved around false investment reports he would order for his customers. Investors would invest their savings in retirement and trusting to make money, all the while Madoff would choose some of the best performing stocks and then have his company falsify reports of investment and profit in that stock. Meanwhile, the invested money never left the company. Investors would be encouraged to continue investing and not withdraw funds based on the astonishing results that the company falsely produced. Those who did make withdrawals would be paid from other investors' money. While many had their doubts about the legitimacy of Madoff's investments, the scheme didn't begin to unravel until clients began to request withdrawals totaling nearly $7 billion. He only had an estimated $300 million to pay out. Before the scheme became public in 2008, several people began to notice red flags about Madoff's company. The most notable whistleblower was financial analyst Harry Markopolos. In 2000, Markopolos reported to the Securities and Exchange Commissions, the SEC, that it was mathematically impossible to produce the returns that he was making. His claim was dismissed. He tried again with more evidence in 2005 and 2007, but was once again ignored. Other investment services and banks refused to do business with Madoff during this time because they were skeptical about the legitimacy of his business. However, due to Mr. Madoff's reputation as a seasoned and trusted member of the financial community, he avoided much scrutiny and was able to get away with his scheme for years. By the time the scheme came crashing down on Madoff, he had embezzled nearly $17 billion from investors. He was arrested on December 11, 2008 on one count of securities fraud. He was convicted in 2009 of 11 felony charges including money laundering, perjury, false filings with the SEC, and fraud. He received a sentence of 150 years of incarceration. As of February 2018, $11.4 billion has been recovered and reimbursed to investors. According to utilitarianism ethics, an action is right if and only if it produces the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for everyone. Madoff stole money from his clients, essentially taking all and leaving them with nothing. According to the fraudulent reports, his clients were prospering, but in reality they were being robbed blind. Madoff's case fails miserably under the rules of Kantian ethics. Immanuel Kant theorized that moral obligations are not based on consequences. Instead, our actions should be based solely on a higher moral law. Therefore, Kantian ethics are rules of conduct that state we should do what's right simply because it's the right thing to do. Madoff lied, cheated, and stole people's livelihoods. He showed no remorse while committing these actions, and this led to his harsh criminal penalty when he was convicted. Bernard L. Madoff investment securities did not show corporate social responsibility. They put their own profits over the welfare of their customers and society as a whole. While Milton Friedman, an opponent of corporate social responsibility, argued that a company's sole responsibility was to maximize profits, he would not have agreed with the illegal and immoral way that Madoff went about doing so. The final ethical theory to be examined in this case is the virtue ethics theory. Virtue ethics revolves around the person we should be. It focuses on a moral character rather than actions. Madoff's actions were not driven by any positive personal ethical compass such as honesty, reliability, compassion, or virtue. The only virtuous actions he showed were after he was caught. He did confess and plead guilty, but had he not been caught, there is simply no evidence to suggest he would not have continued his Ponzi scheme. When examining the ethical and legal ramification of a case so profound that it has reshaped the way investment is done, it is important to note that the SEC and investment world is still reacting and settling this case. However, we can list key newly developed practices that a company can follow to avoid falling in these dark footsteps. Transparent accounting practices are important to build trust between stakeholders in the company. Every successful company makes a profit. However, obscene profit margins are often a sign of fraudulent activity. A healthy whistleblowing culture is also recommended. Employees need to feel comfortable coming forward without fear of retribution. Finally, hiring ethical workers can ensure that they have the workforce that will not tolerate unethical behavior. Bernard Madoff made a fortune employing unethical practices. Thanks to this case, tougher regulations are now in place from the SEC to monitor companies' actions. It is now up to present and future businessmen and women to learn from his mistakes and employ the ethical theories discussed in this paper to create a more socially responsible business climate.